Hi everyone. Yeah, this is Aluminum Tarot. Going to go on a bit of a different kind of angle with this conversation. I did want to speak a little bit about the Charlie Kirk assassination. Of course, he was assassinated as he was a political figure, and he was very visible within the community, the international community, and the social media scene. What I feel about what has taken place, I remember, I think it was September 10th. I was on a bike trip and received the news about it, and it's kind of one of those situations that 2025 has brought to us. Yet another chapter in this very grim year that has befallen us. Over the last few months has been, as I said in one of the most recent posts, one of my ramblings that I posted on here, was that it seemed to me like this was a year of very unfortunate events, like a series of unfortunate events, if you want to call it that. And this latest death that we've all experienced has been quite brutal and quite painful for many people who were not only followers, but people who actually disagreed with the man. And the way I had perceived the loss was that he was a man who hadn't really done terrible things in society, but raised a perspective. He created a dialectic which allowed for people a platform where they could argue their viewpoints. And one of the things that I did love about Charlie was that he was able to get people to support their own ideas with evidence, to use polemics, to use different kind of debating tactics, which allow for people to articulate their ideas. And one of the things that I consistently saw with his videos was that the people he debated with, they would resort to ad hominem attacks. When you have ad hominem attacks, basically that means that you have lost the debate. And the debate has now gotten to the point where it's resorted to violence. I've expressed that, me being an American and me also being British as well, a lot of what society is founded on was the idea that we could have discourse and rational debate about certain topics that would allow us to overcome difficulties between us, because due to the diversification of the society, due to the fact that there are many people from different walks of life, we're not going to see everything eye to eye. And that's a good thing, because what it does is it allows for us to open up the conversation about, what to tolerate, what not to tolerate, ideas that we can, support, and other ideas that we maybe should rethink. And to me, that is one of the founding principles of a democracy, I would assume. Yes, there have been incidences and issues of violence, wars, constantly going throughout the United States. I think maybe the United States has been at war with someone, some country, about 4/5 of its entire existence. And so I do understand that, violence has been a part of history. However, when it comes to rational debate, discussions, discourse, we need to use our minds before we use our bullets or other weapons or horrible things that we can use to try to silence the opposition in that sense. I think that the legacy that he has left is going to be one of, he was a very strong Christian leader, if you want to say that. He stood by his conservative values. He did stand for something, and he was a very skilled debater. I think he did a very good job with a lot of his conversations with people. And he would only resort to antagonism typically when the other side refused to engage, or they would resort to those ad hominem attacks as before. But the legacy that he left was that, being American, or being in the scope of facing not necessarily an enemy, but an opponent. A person that you could square toe to toe with, and come out of the argument learning something new. I think that is the founding principle of dialectics, where you can actually move the needle to change minds and change hearts. And that was what he gave his life for. And it is a very unfortunate thing that the people that have engaged with him have resorted to violence, because a lot of what they speak about is based on emotion. And it's based on a very solipsistic view of what society should be. And it's not to say that because someone is trans or someone is, part of the LGBT community or any of that matter, that they have a solipsistic viewpoint per se. We understand that everyone's genetic makeup, or, the philosophical worldview is completely different. So when it comes to racism or sexuality of that, it is expected that we have these differences. It is another thing that when we use violence to kind of beat that idea over someone else's way of life, or even worse, resort to what happened on September 10th. This is going to ignite a very difficult situation for the United States. It's going to galvanize sides. I think the people who have called for violence have not really seen what large-scale violence looks like on their home soil. The United States has not fought a war on its home soil since the Civil War, and that was one of the most brutal, if not the bloodiest war in U.S. history, and that took place on its own soil. So I think that people should really rethink what it means to move the needle in that way, to where there is a full-out conflict between opposing sides. And I think that this is how we start getting those stories in our lifetime that are written in history books, where there are catastrophic consequences of human behavior. And this is one reason why, for my channel specifically, I always advocate healing, understanding of self, and facing the shadow. And from what we have seen over the last 72 hours, there is a shadow that is forming over this entire this entire planet, and we need to find out whether or not we can face it, transmute it into something better, or if we're going to allow it to consume us all. And my viewpoints have changed a lot over the years. I used to be very leftist. Me personally, I've come to form my own opinions about everything, and not to take sides, but to understand things for what they are. And, I hope that the people who celebrated his death realize that they have not only damaged their reputation online. There have been a lot of people who are getting fired over expressing these viewpoints that someone should be murdered for their views, which does not exist in a democratic society. But additionally, how it's going to force people to celebrate Charlie's life even more. And I think that in doing this, even in the work that I do, or at least try to do on this channel, and the work that people are doing in their own channels, whether that's through podcasts, discussions, debates, tarot, technology, any of those things, we do put ourselves at risk when we go up against a large crowd of people. You could even say that what Charlie did was very Christ-like. I'm not a Christian, but I do understand his viewpoints. And And I think that, when you speak out against the world, or at least against an audience who may not appreciate your views, who may not appreciate you wanting to stir the pot, you do put yourself at risk. And I think he was willing to take that sacrifice. I think it should never have come to that, because all he did was just show another side. I think that the polarization of the United States, and to an even greater degree, or even to another degree, the polarization of the United Kingdom here. There were marches that took place yesterday. They were largely peaceful. They did show a minute of silence to Charlie Kirk. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I do think that was a massive show of respect from both sides of the pond. And it's not about who you are per se, but it is the right to exist and your ability to make your voice heard, to challenge the ideas of the prevailing order without fear of reprisal of such. And I just hope that this doesn't escalate. I cannot promise that it will not escalate. I just hope that we can look at these situations that have taken place, especially with the rise of course, Donald Trump. He is one side of the same coin, in my opinion. So for me, when it comes to the way people vote, you have to look at what's behind the mask, what's behind the curtain, in order to really understand where those perspectives are going and why they exist. But just to be brutally honest with you, I think that we have to spread more light in this world. There needs to be more light. There needs to be a real understanding, a maturity in our discussions with each other. And furthermore, I personally do not tolerate people coming from a very emotional stance where they refuse to articulate their facts and resort to name calling, to violence, to social media slander, because it's infected and pervaded so many aspects of our society, whether that's dating, whether that's jobs, whether that's your LinkedIn status, whether that's your political viewpoints. There is a pervasive mob mentality that has destroyed the very fabric of human existence, and it is bifurcating our entire world into two camps. And it's almost like a rapture, in essence, separating the saints from the sinners. I don't think that Charlie was a sinner at all. I think that he has been made a saint through what has taken place on September 10th. You do not have to agree with everything that he says. I certainly did not, but I appreciated his ability to stand firm, resolute, and to argue points using debating tactics that are tried and tested. And that is the pain of stepping forward and trying to be a voice for many people. And this has happened on the left and the right. I hope that the left understands that. Many of its people like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Harvey Milk, we talk about him quite a bit, who was a member of the LGBTQ community. People like Alan Turing, who was a part of the LGBTQ community, who lost his life due to the horrors that, being persecuted created. And he's one of my most respected minds. And not too long ago we lost someone from the Save a Fox mission, which was one of my favorite characters on YouTube, Michaela Raines. The mob mentality that caused her to take her own life exists around the world. And these people are being brought to light. There is a darkness in this world that tries to snuff out the light. And I think that that light only grows stronger because it finds its demarcation lines within the darkness. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope this rambling made somewhat sense. And I don't know, I just felt like I needed to say something before I left out. If you like the channel, please subscribe, send a like, send a comment. Let me know what you think, whether it was you agreed or disagreed with Charlie Kirk, whether or not you feel comfortable with the massive changes, the massive kind of unease and malaise that has been taking place in our society over the last few years. Just let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and I'll, do them within reason, of course. And all I can say is I wish everyone love and light. We do have to prepare ourselves for what comes next, because I have a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that things will only get worse before they get better. So I'm just going to try to do what I can on my end to hopefully keep that light alive. Okay. Anyways, thank you very much. Until next time.